Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Garden Hour with MU Extension. I am Gwen Funk, and I'm the field specialist in horticulture in Northwest Missouri. And we have got quite a lineup for you today. We have a lot of questions that come in about pollinators, and we have Eliza is going to be talking with us quite a bit about the plants that can support pollinators and be here to answer some more specific questions that you might have. So we're just really excited about that. Plus, we're also going to feature some of our All-American Select plants that we've that we're growing and trying to feature this season. So I think it'll be an interesting time for you. Let me advance forward. As always, we want to make sure that you know where your horticulture specialist is. So here is a map showing our different ranges so you can kind of find where you live and kind of cross-reference that with the person that's there. And then we have email addresses that are listed. Also, we are very soft with those boundaries. So if you come across a boundary or something like that, it's not like we're going to say, no, you can't ask me, go ask her or him. So we are a very collaborative group. So we will be happy to answer questions. Any of us will. And then just remember that you can watch this live on YouTube at the address that you see there. And then we have snippets from previous garden hours, plus you can also rewatch the full garden hour whenever you have time for it. So with that, I will stop sharing, and we have Zack here who is going to tell us about all of the weather that we're having.
Great. Thank you, Gwen, and good afternoon. We've really warmed up nicely this spring, and since we last met for the garden hour, that means we can get outside and start working in the garden as well. So we see that clearly here, just looking at the 2025 climate summary and what our temperatures and precipitation have looked like so far this year. And so if you look at the temperature bar graph here, we see that in January and February, those temperatures where the bars are blue were a couple degrees below average. So we really did have that cold and snowier winter than we usually see. But then look at the contrast in March. When we typically start warming up, we did it even quicker this year because our March temperatures were nearly 8 degrees above average. So it was a very warm March. It was our 8th warmest on record. And I think we saw that with trees, flowers, and things starting to bloom a little bit on the early side across the state. And then if we look at precipitation, along with the colder temperatures this winter, we were also a little on the dry side, and that did continue in March. And so fortunately, we saw some rainfall in early April, but March, the state finished about an inch below average for rainfall there. But one thing that everyone seems to be talking about this spring is the amount of wind we've seen. And spring typically is our kind of windiest time of the year from a climate perspective, but it is true that this year has been windier than average. And so if we look at across the state, nearly everywhere had a windier than average March, but several locations, if we look at the gusts and some of the higher winds we see, were their windiest ever going back on record. And so this is the Kansas City International Airport, their weather station there. We saw that the daily average gust during March was 34 miles per hour, and that was record breaking there. So certainly a lot of wind so far this year. And as we've gotten into April, a different story, especially with precipitation for the state here. And so while we had been dry, I think so far this month has been characterized by our big April rainfall event, where the first week of the month we saw several rounds of storms and heavy rainfall. And so if we look at our month-to-date precipitation here, basically this map is just showing that early April event where we had the very high totals down here in the boot heel up to a foot of rainfall, but good totals across most of the state here. And so kind of depends where you are, but roughly south and east of I-44 here, you're well above average for April on rainfall. But I will note Columbia, Kansas City, we've only picked up about a couple inches of rainfall. And April is one of our wetter months on average. And so a few spots slightly on the dry side and could use a little bit more rainfall there. But temperatures pretty close to average for this time of year as well. So we even see Cape Girardeau, for example, actually hitting that average to the nearest tenth of a degree here. So nothing noteworthy about our temperatures so far. And then over the past 7 days, yeah, since that big early April rain event, pretty dry across the state. We've had some cloudy days with a few sprinkles, but this is our 7 day radar estimated precipitation. And you can see it's been completely dry for the western half of the state, but most of us didn't pick up any measurable rainfall at all during that time period. And so with that, we do still have, if you check the U.S. Drought Monitor, some areas of the state that are still abnormally dry or even have some moderate drought in northeast Missouri. And so this is because of that dry winter and dry fall we had. So in some locations, these spring rainfall events, that rainfall is really beneficial. And we have seen some improvements to drought conditions so far in April here. But looking ahead, it looks like we've got another active pattern for this next week, which features several consecutive days of rain and storms across the area. And so this map here shows our 7 day precipitation forecast, and you can see the heaviest rainfall forecast for the entire country is centered right over southwest Missouri and along the Oklahoma border. And this will be a good rainmaker for most of the state. So everywhere's forecast to get at least an inch. But this area in red here, this is a forecast for at least 3 inches of rainfall and greater than 4 inches in extreme southwest Missouri. So could see some flooding from some of those higher totals as well, but a lot of moisture over the next few days. And this is the severe weather outlook and from NOAA's Storm Prediction Center. And I want to state that this isn't definitely going to be the level of severe weather event that we had in early April, but still a chance for some storms. And so we see every day, starting today through Sunday, at least a marginal or slight risk for severe weather. But really, why I wanted to show this is it really kind of shows the evolution of this event, where we're starting today and tomorrow with storms in the northern part of the state, but over the week, they kind of slowly start working off to the southeast and end up departing southeastern Missouri late Sunday. So a pretty prolonged, slow-moving storm and rain event here that we can expect. And so I do also want to note that parts of southeastern Missouri that we highlighted that got those heavier totals still have some river flooding, still have some very wet spots. And so not all of us need that rainfall. And so we'll have to watch out with this next batch of rain over the next 5 days to see if there's any flood warnings along rivers or even flash flood warnings as well. But another thing we'll closely watch is temperatures for this time of year, especially with lots of stuff getting planted and going in the ground here. And I'm here in Columbia, and we got down to around 40 degrees this morning. It was crisp, but no frost or anything. But this is the temperature forecast for the next 7 days for Columbia. And we can see we're going to warm up over these next couple of days with the storm chances. And then we can actually see as the rain moves off here, a cold front. But I do want to point out here, our next two kind of chilly nights for the state will be Monday here and Tuesday as well, where lows will get back down to around 40 degrees. But if we look at, this is one weather forecast model for next Monday and Tuesday morning, lows right now, upper 30s to around 40, and we don't see any of those frost temperatures, which would be below 36, or freeze temperatures below 32. And so keep an eye on the forecast. It could trend a little bit colder, but for now, we don't see any frost or freeze over the next week. And the good news is that we're also on average, getting to the time of year when we don't expect any more frost or freeze events. And so this is a map that shows, on average, the last day that we see those the freezing temperatures or spring temperatures dropping below 32 degrees. And it's pretty much this week or next week for a lot of the state except for southeast Missouri. And so as long as we kind of have continued normal weather into May, on average, we don't see any additional frost or freeze events. And fortunately, the kind of extended forecast supports this too. So this is the 8 to 14-day outlook, which covers the last week of April here. And we see a probability for higher than average temperatures. And so this is good and would point to no frost or freeze in that 8 to 14-day period as well. But I do want to note the kind of chance for increased precipitation chances for this week 2 period, because we're going to have a very wet next 7 days. This is hinting that the second week beyond that could also be pretty wet as well. So definitely something to keep an eye on in the forecast. And I'll end here with the kind of NOAA's seasonal outlook for April through June. That takes us pretty much halfway through the growing season. And there's not a lot of confidence in the forecast right now. And so I'll show here that right now, the forecast is that we might be a little on the warm side here as we get into the early summer period, but our precipitation forecast, we interpreted this as for Missouri, equal chances of wet or equal chances of dry, meaning we really don't know in the forecast how that's going to shake out. So could be a wet or dry. We'll have to see as we get closer. But other than that, that's all I've got for today. And thank you all for your attention.
Thank you, Zach. It's always good to hear all of the trends and things and just to see how your local weather kind of fits in with the region. So I always find it really interesting. So we will go ahead and dive right in to our pollinator discussion. So Eliza, I would like for you to take it away.
Awesome. Let me share my screen. Okay. I'm gonna have to reshare once I go to presentation. Can you see the full screen presentation?
Yes, we are seeing it great. It's perfect.
Cool. Okay. Awesome. Let me hide floating meeting controls. All right. Well, hi, everyone. I'm Eliza Pessereau. I'm a field specialist in horticulture in St. Louis City and County. And today I want to talk about some pollinator plants, but specifically, what's the buzz with No Mow May? We're coming up on May. In urban areas, that's a lot of what folks end up talking about when we talk about protecting pollinators. It's kind of low-hanging fruit. Maybe I'll just not mow my lawn, but is that actually what you should be doing to support pollinators? So in order to talk about No Mow May and where it comes from, it's important to understand spring resources and where they fall in terms of the native bee life cycle. So most of our native bees here in the US they're overwintering in trees, in holes in the ground, and leaf litter like this bumblebee in the diagram here. And they could be overwintering as adults or as eggs. And then overwinter, they pupate, they turn into adults, and then they emerge as adults in the spring. So when those adult bees emerge in the spring, what they're looking for is floral resources. They're looking for flowers that will provide them nectar and pollen, because that way they can get enough energy to start their own either colony or solitary bee nest and then lay their own eggs. In the spring, a lot of what's flowering that early in the season is flowering trees like the apple we have in this other photo. But with land use change, agricultural, housing development, urban development, a lot of those floral resources that early in the spring have gone away. So No Mow May was proposed as a way to kind of bring back those early season floral resources. And the idea was to not mow our lawns for the whole month of May and let those flowering weeds like dandelion grow. Lawns make up about 2% of US land use. That ends up being about 40 million acres of land in the US. And that makes lawns the largest irrigated crop, if you can think of it as a crop in the US. So converting all that land, even for a month in May, would provide a lot more pollen and nectar resources for bees when they really need it. However, No Mow May is a idea, this strategy comes from England specifically. So it came from an organization in England a couple years ago. Um, and May is the time of year when their flowering weeds like dandelion are growing. So in England, it makes sense not to mow in May and to let those weeds grow. It's really good timing. However, here in the US, May, especially here in Missouri, our dandelions and other lawn weeds are growing more like April, maybe even late March. So not mowing in May doesn't necessarily apply to us here in Missouri. Additionally, a lot of what's growing, those flowering plants on our lawns, are not native to the US. Some of them are okay food resources for pollinators, like some of our henbits and dead nettle. They have a good amount of pollen, or excuse me, a good amount of nectar. Um, but things like dandelion that we see a lot of, even though bees will visit them, the pollen that's in a dandelion lacks a crucial amino acid that will prevent bees from developing physiologically to the best of their ability. So basically, if bees are only eating dandelion, they are eating junk food. Um, so dandelion isn't necessarily the best food source for them to be eating, specifically that early in the spring. And additionally, since this initiative was started in England, it makes sense that honeybees are kind of who they were targeting, who they're supporting. They have lots of other native bee species as well, but honeybees are native in England. So they are often the ones who are visiting our lawns here in the US, our lawn flowers, also because those lawn flowers are probably native to Europe and Asia. So really there's a bit of a mismatch between why No Mow May was started and applying it here in Missouri. Additionally, not mowing your lawn for the whole month of May could have some other issues in terms of lawn health. So lawns actually need to be mowed regularly for the health of that turf grass. So going a whole month without mowing and then mowing everything down back to about 4-inch height is actually going to stress your lawn out a lot. Some homeowner associations or counties or even cities will have ordinances also that prevent people from growing anything in their front yard, lawn or not, that's higher than a certain height. What I have right here is the ordinance that we have in St. Charles County. It's actually pretty lax. We allow up to 10 inches in plant height. So you could let your grass grow that tall and your weeds grow that tall, and no one's going to fine you. But a lot of places in the US, the ordinance says more between 4 and 8 inches in height. So that could end up slapping you with the fine if you are letting your lawn grow any higher. And then, of course, letting weeds grow in our lawn can allow them to spread to other neighbors' lawns, which can create their own issues. So things like dandelion, when they have their seed heads, those will spread really easily. So what can you do? No Mow May was kind of your low-hanging fruit. That's what you wanted to do. It was going to be your easy way to support pollinators, but don't worry, there are other ways you can support pollinators with your lawn. If you still want to have a lawn in your front yard, that's okay. There are low-growing plants, native and some that are non-native actually, that will support pollinators that you can incorporate into your lawn. So common violet is a native plant we have here in Missouri. We have many different species of violet that are native. It's low growing, so you could still mow your grass and you would not end up hurting the flowers. Self-heal is also native and supports a really wide diversity of pollinators. And then Dutch white clover, although it's not native, supports a distinct group of native pollinators, distinct from self-heal. So there was a study from University of Minnesota looking at lawns that were improved with self-heal. And having both Dutch white clover and self-heal meant that they were able to support even more different types of pollinators. Even though Dutch white clover is not native, it's got high protein pollen and it has a lot of nectar. So bees are still going to go to it. If you're feeling kind of wild and you are open to just totally destroying your lawn, there's this big movement right now that some of you might already be a part of, which is rewilding your yard. I like to think about what the vegetation in our area looked like before colonization happened. What was the vegetation like? So I pulled up this map from MSDIS where we can see the historic vegetation of Missouri. So a lot of the state had prairie, some parts of the state had forest or woodland. And then we also had some barrens or scrub. So going off of that, you can look up the plants that are specific to that type of habitat and plant them in your yard so that you're supporting the specific ecosystem in your county. I know it's really popular since here in the Midwest, prairie historically was a huge ecosystem. So it's really popular to convert a portion of your yard into a small prairie. And a lot of those plants are actually more drought resistant. They'll grow better throughout the year. You won't have to do as much maintenance on your yard. And they provide not only food resources for bees, but also living habitat as well. So that was just a little bit of my um, recommendations on no mow May, whether or not you want to do it. If you still want to participate in no mow May, you certainly can. Just know that those weeds might not necessarily be the best food resource for pollinators. And you might even want to move that period a little bit early, move it to April. Or instead of going the entire month without mowing, you could just leave your lawn for a couple weeks and then mow it so you're not stressing out your lawn as much. Um, I want to say thank you. And if you have any questions, let's open it up for discussion. Um, I also wanted to remind folks to register for the Master Pollinator Steward course. We're holding a bunch of those all over the state. And in that course, you'll be learning about honeybees, native bees, and how you can protect pollinators in your area. So if anyone's got questions about specific weeds in your yard or ways you can support pollinators while still kind of maintaining a pretty yard, feel free to drop those in the chat and we can kind of have a little discussion right now.
You, Eliza, that was really interesting. I always wondered, so if we do keep dandelions in our yard, that will support the honeybees. Am I understanding that correctly? But not necessarily our native pollinators.
It will support, yes. So native pollinators and honeybees, they'll both still kind of feed on dandelion, but any bee is not going to be supported that well by dandelion, actually,
Okay.
because it's missing that amino acid. Yeah.
Okay. That's good to know. And if I wanted to add some self-heal into my lawn, where would I find a seed source? Do you have any ideas
Oh,
on that? I've not seen that listed as a,
yeah,
uh,
that's a really good question.
that's,
I'm not actually sure about seed sources, but I know we have, at least here in St. Louis, we have a native plant nursery. So I would assume
mhm.
looking for a native plant nursery, they will have a seed source. The research that was done on this was done in Minnesota. So I could also see if those researchers have a good source for finding self-heal.
Okay. Any other questions? We can just kind of open this up for a few minutes if you'd like and see. Oh, we have the
Eliza,
expert online.
Eliza, when you were doing this presentation, I was doing a little bit of researching, and Iowa State University has some great publications. Two of them in particular. One does talk about the no mow and how there are some things that you need to think about as far as no mow in May. And the other one I came across was how to create a pollinator lawn. I didn't have a chance to really look at it since I just found it while you were speaking, but I thought it was a really great at a glance publication. Now, again, I was a little bit colder than what we are here in most of our state, but at least it's similar and it gives us a little bit more understanding of what we might be able to do here in Missouri.
Yeah, that's a great point. I was looking specifically at University of Minnesota also has a really good kind of whole program looking at creating bee lawns. But again, you do want to think about what's going to do well here in our state. A lot of the plants that are native up there are still going to be native down here, but they might not necessarily be able to withstand the hot summers.
And I see in the chat there, we have checked with Missouri Prairie Foundation for sources of seed. Grownative.org might have some retailers that might have some seed supply as well for some different things. So that's a good source. Jennifer, have there been any questions come to you on this topic?
I have not received any. Nope. But on this topic, I will mention that I'm here in Kirksville and I've been planting my cool season garden. And typically, well, in past years, I have taken out the dandelions. I find myself, popping those out in the garden. But this year, because of all the master pollinator classes we've done and just a lot of the information that's out there, I find myself leaving dandelions now that I normally would have taken out. So I find, just having that violet in a bed or that dandelion here or there, it's not a bad thing. So I've learned now through the years that it's okay to have a few dandelions in your yard or your garden and violets because I do see the bees on those. So it is okay.
Yeah, and they're certainly visiting dandelion. It's just not the best pollen source for them. So as long as they have some other pollen sources, which you probably have flowering trees or violets, other things that are flowering, then hopefully they're getting all the nutrients that they need.
Right. And I will also mention that I know the leafcutter bees are out here because I have Missouri primrose and some other native plants in a bed, and they've got the crescent moon shapes cut out of them. And so I know they're at work right now.
I love that. That's awesome. There's also, I did make another slide let's see.
And while you're finding that, I do the same thing, Jennifer. I would always go out and pull all the dandelion flower heads. And what I find I'm doing now is I let the yellow go. And as soon as I see that it closes up and gets ready to start doing the seeds, then I will go ahead and go out and pull those seed heads off instead. There's enough dandelions across the neighborhood to repollinate my yard or reseed my yard with dandelions. So that's kind of what I'm doing at this point.
Yeah, and I think it's important not to forget the shrubs and the trees too. Oak trees are really good to help support pollinators. And then my wild plum and my red buds right now are just covered. And even my crabapple that bloomed a little bit earlier, you can just walk underneath it and just hear the buzzing. So you know they're very active there.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like viburnum is blooming right now where I am. And we've got all the dogwoods, apples, cherry, some things that aren't necessarily native, but there's so many flowering trees right now that's actually the primary source of pollen for bees right now. I did find my other slide. I can talk a little bit more about different weed species and what they do or don't do for bees. Let's see. So one thing that's interesting, a lot of what I also see in lawns is henbit and dead nettle. And those, there's not very much research on what pollinators are actually visiting those plants. They are in the Lamiaceae family, so they're closely related to lavender and basil and things like that, all of which, when they flower, they're very, very popular with pollinators of all different kinds. But there's not a lot known about which specific types of pollinators are visiting henbit and dead nettle. For creeping Charlie specifically, this is also in the Lamiaceae family, but the type of pollinator reward that it kind of uses as a strategy to attract pollinators is called, it's like lucky charm or something like that. It's basically where only 8% of the flowers actually have a lot of nectar in them, and the rest of the flowers only have a little bit of nectar. So it keeps the bees going back and visiting all of the flowers to where it can take a bee about 6 minutes to get all the pollen, or excuse me, all the nectar that they need just from Creeping Charlie because they have to go to so many different flowers. So that is a resource for bees. It's a weed in your yard. But again, they're having to work extra hard to actually get that nectar.
Yeah, and I see a couple of questions in the chat about the henbit roots. And well, first, let me go back up here to about dandelions. Let's see, they have a quick turnover. That's way up. Had a lot of stuff coming in really quickly here. Any suggestions? I'm thinking that the person is wanting to know, what suggestions to have in your yard besides oh, there it is. Doesn't take too long for them to take over. Oh, take over. So yeah, I see what you're saying. So I think what Debbie said about clipping the heads and trying to collect that seed so it doesn't spread would be a good way, or maybe rogue out a few of them, maybe not all of them. If you really, but based on what Eliza just said, maybe, don't need that many. It's okay to have them, but
Yeah, it's
it's okay to
okay,
grow them as well.
but focus on other things. I would focus, it's definitely not your primary way that you're going to be supporting pollinators.
Yeah. And then about henbit and whether it's stealing water from like trees and shrubs that are there. And my experience is that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that they have just a very shallow, minimal root system that, and they're not there for very long. They have a very short life cycle. So I don't think they would steal water or hinder water uptake by your woody shrubs that you might have.
Yeah, I would imagine the same thing because I know they have shallow roots. So your woody shrubs and trees, their roots are going much deeper, and so they'll be able to access any water. And then the henbit, luckily, is pretty easy to pull up because it has those shallow roots.
Yeah, I would say that's even for the newer ones that you just have planted. So, okay, I might have to look into that. I see okay, Jennifer's answering that question there too. And then let's see, there was one other question here. Okay, I'm not finding it. So hopefully we've gotten
The
all of
Creeping
those
Jenny,
here.
are you referring
the
to Creeping Charlie?
Yes. Yeah, that's what I was wondering, if Creeping Jenny is the same as Creeping Charlie. I'm not familiar.
Creeping Jenny and Creeping Charlie are two different things. I haven't seen as much Creeping Jenny as a weed, more as an ornamental plant. So I'm not sure about its kind of existence in lawns in terms of being a pollen resource. But yeah, I'm actually not so sure about that.
Okay, we can kind of look into that maybe and get something before the session is over. Okay, well, that was really informative. So I think we will transition now into our second presentation about some of our All-American Select winners. And Jennifer and Debbie are going to be leading that presentation. Keep your questions coming into the chat or ask questions here. Since Jennifer's going to be presenting, she won't be able to get to your questions right away, but let us know. We definitely want to get to them.
Oh, so I guess I'm starting out. So last year, most of us horticulture field specialists were at a training, and one of our colleagues mentioned something about the All-America selections. And we hadn't heard about that too much. And so a bunch of us delved into it, and I got my Master Gardener chapter all involved. So the All-American Selections is a nonprofit organization. What you're seeing here are 4 of the different 12 winners for this year. The celosia on the right side, I have tried hard to find that seed. I love that pink color. It's already sold out. So hopefully they'll have some, I know what it is now, and I'll be looking next year for that particular color. It's just a gorgeous, vibrant pink. So let's go to the next slide and we'll learn all about this. So the All-America Selections is a nonprofit organization. It is the oldest established independent testing organization in North America. And it kind of started out in that time frame when people were starting to breed different types of flowers and vegetables, and in particular vegetables at the beginning, and they were saying theirs was better than another breeder's varieties. And so it started as this nonprofit. It is an organization that would be similar to kind of what we call United Underwriters Laboratories, which is that in itself, and a lot of us have heard about that. It's a global safety certification organization founded in 1894. Again, this is the UL Labs that develops safety standards and conducts testing to ensure products meet safety requirements. And so All America Selection, they started out with that same kind of a concept that all these different breeders were saying theirs was the best. So the All America Selections, what they're doing is they created, it's a neutral nonprofit that created standards as well as trials of all these new different types of varieties of flowers and vegetables. It is an incentive program so that breeders can then go ahead when they've got a new variety that they want to have acknowledged as an All America Selections. They will submit that in. There will be trials of both the flowers and the vegetables in a garden setting. There are about 90 different judges in 6 different regions across the US, and all of them have a standard rubric. They compare the new variety with those that are still out there in the market as a comparison back and forth to show that their particular variety might be a little bit better than those that are already out on the market. And so they've been in existence. And this picture at the bottom is of carrots. That variety, the Imperator variety for carrots, was submitted in for the trials in 1933. It was judged all across the US with university, with extension, with private gardens, as well as garden centers, a lot of different varieties of individuals that are part of those judges, and they go through a rigorous training and they do a lot of comparison. And so those 90 judges are going to score. So in 1933, and I don't know if they had 90 judges back then, but they do now. And Imperator carrot was the winner for the vegetable category. And it is actually still in seed catalogs today. So that tells you just how good of a variety that particular carrot is. Then once they are awarded and given and acknowledged as either a regional or a state All America Selection, this nonprofit organization works with different entities to create display gardens. And there are about 200 different display gardens across the United States, and there's actually 9 of them located in Missouri. Jennifer and I and Gwen each have a location where we're doing display gardens. Jennifer and I are doing it through our Master Gardener program. And Gwen, who are you doing it with? Is it with your Master Gardener chapters or with something else? I know it's at a farm.
Yeah, mine is at the Hundley Whaley Education and Research Extension Farm. It's over in Albany, Missouri.
Sure. And Jennifer, she'll talk about hers. She's doing it up at the Kirksville Extension Office. And then my Master Gardeners are actually taking on this task, and they're doing it at Jefferson Farm and Garden. And we're excited. The chapter is really excited about all this. So there are 9 different ones. And in the chat box, I'll drop down some good information about all this once Jennifer starts talking. So let's look at the next page, Jennifer. So this is the website for the All America Selections, and this was a video recording that the All American Selections did for the state Master Gardener coordinators across the US. And so I grabbed this particular slide because I thought it was important. It answers what are the AAS winners all the way back to 1933. And it'll list all of them. Some of them you'll still find, like the carrots in catalogs. Some of them have gone by the wayside because there are better varieties out there. I know fusarium wilt is an issue with some of the different types of flowers and vegetables. So a breeder may have a better, more resistant crop or variety. for fusarium wilt. And so that would be one of the kind of a category. Is it brighter in color? Does it stand up longer for its flower or its fruit? They also taste the vegetables for, is it sweet? Is it not? Whatever the standards are for that particular plant, and lots of things that are out there. The second arrow that you'll see from the left is pointing to the display gardens. So if you want to know where the gardens are, you can look at every state. So if you're traveling this summer and you're driving past someplace, you could always stop and look at it. They do have a blog, so if you're interested, as well as out on the social media. They do a lot of postings. A lot of great information. It's really added some energy into the concept of what is AAS. And we're really excited to be doing this in locations across the state. And I think, Jennifer, now it's your turn to take over, and I'll drop in some of those links.
All right, so here you see the setup for our seed starting at the Adair County Extension Center in Kirksville. Most of us received our seeds back in December or maybe early January, and some of them are cool season vegetables, and the seed had to be started in January or early February. And I started seed for the first plant on January 31st. So here you see the setup, you see the media I used, and then I put them under a heating, or put them on a heating mat and then cover them with a dome. And the first flower I want to focus on today, or the plant, is the Dahlia Black Forest Ruby. And this one was easy to germinate. It's done very well. It is not planted out in the garden yet because it does not like the colder or cooler temperatures that we have had. This one has dark foliage like you see here in the photo, and it's going to have ruby red flowers. So I am really excited to see it bloom this summer because red is my favorite color. So I'm looking forward to the dahlia and seeing how that does here in Kirksville. So it's known for its dark foliage and the pretty red flowers. Another thing with this plant is that these are sturdy plants. They do not flop open. Maybe you've had dahlias. I know I have, that the center just flops open as we go through, mid to late summer. And this one here is disease-free all season long. So another plus to this one. This one will grow about 20 to 27 inches in height. It'll be about 18 to 20 inches wide. The flowers will be about 2.5 to 3.5 inches wide. And from the time you start it from seed to flower is about 85 days. And here you can see some of the seedlings that I have started. These photos of the larger plants were just taken here in the this week. You can see it when it was smaller under a grow light. So these seeds for Black Forest Ruby Dahlia were planted on March 5th at the Kirksville site. Nearly every seed in the seed packet germinated, so it had great germination. It is a warm season plant, so it is not planted outdoors in the garden yet. And I do have it in the hardening off stage right now. It is outside currently. It's being exposed to sun and our I'd say fluctuating temperatures here in Northeast Missouri. The next one I want to highlight today is Constance kohlrabi. And this one is a 2025 winner. It has purple fruits. It has purple stems. And it is, they say it's flavorful. I'm going to find out this summer when it's ready to harvest. It is crisp, sweet, and the leaves can be eaten. So you can roast or saute the leaves. This one's going to be about 12 to 16 inches in height. It's going to be about 12 inches wide. They need to be planted 4 inches apart. The fruit size will be about 4 to 5 inches wide, and seed to harvest is 42 days. I planted the seeds for this kohlrabi on February 14th, so I planted them on Valentine's Day. Nearly all the seeds in the packet germinated, and then they were ready to plant outdoors on April 9th. And here you see them in one of the beds. And they could have been planted in late March or early April. We had some rainy days and I wasn't able to get out, but it is a cool season crop. So you can plant them the end of March. Now we have rabbit problems and rabbits like cole crops, which kohlrabi is in that family. So you can see that I have wire fencing around the bed to protect the plants from hungry rabbits. And I did place some straw around it, just not a lot so far, but it is to hold in moisture and keep out weeds. And as they grow, I will add more to that. Now, I am doing this in our garden and grow garden here at the Extension Center. I will be doing garden grow in a different format this year because I need the beds for this new project that we're doing. Moving on to the last one I want to highlight today, and that is the purple magic broccoli. This is one I'm really excited about because the broccoli heads are going to have a purple hue to them. And this one was a 2024 winner. And this one is tolerant of heat. It's tolerant of stress. It's going to produce tight heads that are on about 30-inch tall plants. And when you're planting these, you want to space them about 2 feet apart. And harvest is typically about 90 days after transplanting. And I have these out in the garden already. I started them on January 31st. So this was the very first one of the AAS plants that I started. And you can see them here at about 2 inches tall on a grow light cart here at the Extension Center. And then over on the left side, you see the tray of broccoli. I planted them on April 9th, the same day as a kohlrabi. And again, this is a plant that could have been planted in late March or the first part of April because it's cool season, likes the cooler soil, the cooler weather. And it too is protected with wire fencing to keep out rabbits. Rabbits have always been a problem here at the Adair County Extension Center, and I am going to have to fence off most of our beds to keep the rabbits from eating the plants. But I'm really excited about this one. It's done really well in the propagation flat, and it's doing really well right now out in the garden. It's been in the garden about a week. It's doing well, and I'm excited for the first harvest. And we will be having an educational day, like a field day, at our sites throughout the state sometime this summer. And we will be bringing in people to talk about the different plants and to show you the plants. We want to wait till they are mature and in full bloom, so we have a lot to see. But that will probably happen sometime in late July or maybe August, because again, we want every plant to be in full display of color. And if anyone has questions about the sites, you can reach out to me for the Kirksville site, Debbie for the Columbia site, Gwen is doing one in Northwest Missouri. And then we have other sites also. So reach out to your nearest horticulture specialist for more information.
And I'd like to also add to this that to be a display garden, you have to have education as part of it. So what the education piece is, as what Jennifer said, is she's going to have kind of an educational program around AAS. What is AAS? Why are they doing this? Kind of a mini bit of what I mentioned earlier. But then to kind of showcase what has been some really good varieties that are out there. And so my chapter will also, we have a butterfly festival coming up in June. Towards the end of June, we'll be doing some tours of the garden. Then there are other opportunities because we're at Jefferson Farm and Garden. As where the chapter is doing this, there's going to be a lot of education that's going to be handled around this. As part of a display garden, you get seeds or transplants for the past 3 years worth of winners. And that's why there's a 24 that's added in here for this particular presentation. So lots of great things, lots of wonderful things, beautiful plants that are going to be seen and learned about all summer long. And I know there were a couple questions in the chat box here, Jennifer, so let's check those out. And let's see. Can you reuse your trays and pony packs? Do you have to clean them with vinegar water? How do you clean yours, Jennifer?
I just use soapy water. I use dish detergent and just use a rag in my hands and just clean them that way. Now, it is recommended, I believe, to dip them into a 10% bleach solution. I don't do that. It probably wouldn't be a bad idea, but what I just told you is how I do it. And yeah, and so yes, I do use reuse trays, and sometimes I reuse the cell packs.
And then another question was about container gardening or any of these specifically for that. Yes, so within the past couple of years, AAS has added varieties that are specific for containers, and I believe the cherry tomato variety this year, and at some point we'll talk about that in the rest of some of these different varieties. There were some already mentioned, I believe in the January and February garden hour, but we'll be showcasing some of these others as well. And I think the tomato variety is a container. Just within the past couple of years, they've also added in testing for our trials for perennial plants. Perennial plants have a 3-year commitment before they are actually released as far as if they're a winner or not. So they'll take a little bit longer. So I don't know if there's any out this year. I know there will be for sure next year.
I'd like to mention that here at the Adair County Extension Center, not only did I put them in the garden, but I put one purple magic broccoli in a container. We have 10 large livestock mineral tubs in our garden here. And so what I'm going to do is put different variety or different species of the plants in those pots. So I have the purple magic broccoli already in one, and then I may put a tomato in one and put coleus in one, so we can see how they do in those containers throughout the growing season. So that has been my plan all along, is to test not only them in the garden, but also in containers.
And
That's a
at
really
Jefferson, I'm sorry, Gwen, at Jefferson Farm with the Master Gardeners, we have large container beds that we're using as raised beds, and that's where the vast majority of I wouldn't say the vast majority, at least half of the crops that varieties that have been started from seed will be planted in those raised beds. And then some of them will also be planted directly into the ground. Now, as far as an individual container pot, yes, there are some of those varieties that are out there. Off the top of my head, I don't remember which ones those are, though.
And we had a question about if you planted tomatoes in a container last year, should you replant tomatoes this year? Or should they maybe switch out the soil? What would you recommend on that?
Yeah, I was getting ready to answer that in the
Oh,
chat,
sorry.
but I will say that if you had diseased tomatoes, like with septoria leaf spot or early blight last year, I would not put another tomato back in there this year, because that tomato this year is likely to get those diseases that the tomatoes last year had. So you would want to plant something in a different family that's not susceptible to early blight or septoria leaf spot. Also, what I do is I add new compost or soil to my containers every year. So I kind of refresh them. I don't dump them all out. I just add to it. And I never put the same species of a plant back in the same tub if it was diseased the previous year.
And then for my containers, I did tomatoes last year in containers, and I used potting mix. I did not use potting soil. And so potting mix will come with some fertilizer in it already, but it will real rapidly within the first 4 to 6 weeks easily. All the fertilizer will be used up. So then I continued to fertilize my tomatoes throughout the year. And because I did have, and tomatoes will always, very seldom will you ever find a tomato without a disease. And so I'm totally starting new with new potting mix this year for a couple of my tomatoes that I'll be planting.
Okay, that sounds Really good. Jennifer, do you want to speak really quickly about the master pollinator classes that are going on around the state?
Sure. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So I was able to find a flyer from the Henry County location, and this has all the information that people would need to register at any site, though, except the link would be specific to the Henry County site. So the Master Pollinator Steward course is going to start on May 5th. It's going to run every Monday except Memorial Day through June 16th. The time is 9:30 to noon, and the presentations will be presented by Zoom. That way we can utilize, the best speakers in the state on those topics. But we are still meeting in person at various sites at St. Louis, Kirksville, Columbia, Henry County, Jefferson City, Northwest Missouri. We'll all be meeting in person and Zooming in speakers. The Kansas City group, if you're from that area, you will be watching the Zoom presentations in your home or wherever it's convenient for you. But all those other sites I mentioned are going to have in-person sites. And again, we will Zoom in those speakers. We'll be in there as a class. And also another thing is that every site is going to have 3 field sessions. These are like lab classes where they will meet for at least 2 hours and go out and see a prairie or gardens to identify pollinator plants, identify the insects, and just have that discussion in person out in the field, about pollinators. If you would like to register, you need to contact the site closest to you. So let's say you're from Northwest Missouri, you would need to get a hold of Gwen. If you're from the Northeast Missouri area, the Kirksville area, get a hold of me, okay? If you are from St. Louis, get a hold of Eliza. All right, so we have a registration link specific to each site. That's why you can't just use this one that's right here on the screen. And if anybody has any questions, reach out to us. We'll be glad to answer your questions. The course is $100, and you're going to learn all about pollinators, the pollinators themselves, the plants, how to design a pollinator garden, some of the service-oriented projects that you can get involved in to help pollinators. So it's a great class. We've had a lot of people in Missouri go through it already in the last 5 years or so, and we would love to have you join us if you're interested.
Yeah, thank you. This is a course that doesn't come around all the time, so we're trying to cover as much of the state as we can with this. So if you're interested in it, it might be good to take advantage of this opportunity right now. So hopefully that's something that might pique your interest a little bit. I see that there is a question in the chat from Janet. I think that question is going to require a little bit more information than what we can do here, but I will copy this down and we will try to get back with you. If you could maybe put your email in a private chat to either Debbie, Jennifer, or myself, or Eliza, we will be happy to address that for you. So with that, we'll kind of wrap up the garden hour. Remember that you can go back and watch these previous episodes on the YouTube channel. We also have short snippets with different subject matters, so you can look at different things. If you just have time for a little something, you can also rewatch some of the snippets that we have as well. Our next garden hour will be noon to 1 p.m. on May 21st. We do have, excuse me, this website right here. So if you do have a question that you would like answered, we will try to answer that on the garden hour, or we may direct that directly to a field specialist in your area. Depends on how the schedule works. And then if you noticed in the chat, we had quite a few resources that were there. So if you go to your chat and at the top, you'll see the 3 little dots and you just click more, and then you'll see a bar that says save chat, and that will save it probably into your downloads or into a file. Everybody's computer may be a little bit different how that's set up, but you should be able to save all of those as we go through. And then just a reminder of where or who the horticulture specialists are around the state. Feel free to reach out to any of us and we will direct your question to the best person to get the best, most complete answer. And with that, I will bid you adieu. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope that the sunny weather holds off so you can get a little bit more, few more plants or seeds in the ground before we get hit with the rain. So everyone, thank you very much for being here. We appreciate your time.